This bridge serves to connect the two worlds, to bring the material and the spiritual spheres closer together, so that heaven descends to earth, and the earthly life is raised and brought closer to the higher realms. The chief task of humanity is to unite the world of matter with the world of spirit. Man is the center for the unification of the worlds, because he comprises both a material and a spiritual nature within himself, and is the first earthly being to become aware of the latter. When a traveler stands on a summit, does he not feel that his body is being raised as if he were a unifier of worlds? Indeed, not breaking away from the earth, but the capacity for unifying is what makes man a creator. Man brings about the unification of the worlds by establishing the conditions of both worlds. The conditions of the material world, from which he cannot part anyway, and the conditions of the higher world, with its solemnity, dignity, and serenity, peace and joy, beauty and justice. So, every one of us can, at any time, at any place where he happens to dwell, create a state in which the two spheres touch each other, where both can reveal themselves. Then the gates to heaven are open. This is a process of mutual rapprochement. The material world, strained by the indwelling divine spirit, moves upwards. The divine spirit is directed from above to permeate the gross sphere in order to come to tangible material expression down here. Man, as the head of the material world, is the focus in which the unification is realized. To uphold this link is a tremendous task. We are exposed in these times to an extreme tension because heaven and earth have moved so far apart from each other. The level of the ideals and the level of the tough material reality can hardly be reconciled in the everyday life of our time. The world suffers from a dismemberment which engulfs all great beginnings. In place of unity, dismemberment is preached everywhere. The invisible is isolated from the visible world. The higher is isolated from the earth. Only striving for the unity of the concepts of magnitude can establish the necessary link between the worlds. The dismemberment of the worlds leads to a state of savagery. Instead of getting closer together, heaven and earth are drifting farther and farther apart. Man, belonging to both spheres, is threatened no longer to endure this tension and to be torn apart. The evolutionary movement is not realized so long as the correlation between the spheres is not established. For when the higher world is striving upward and mankind propels itself downward, then indeed the cosmic current cannot be realized. Therefore, disharmony rules in the world. If it is our mission to express our higher self, to reveal the divine within us, that means we are to establish the rule of the divine spirit. We establish the rule of the spirit over ourselves by enforcing the interests of the soul against those of the body. We establish the rule of the spirit over the world by introducing here on earth the higher heavenly conditions of our true home, the world beyond of the soul. What does it mean concretely to establish the rule of the Spirit? To introduce the conditions of heaven on earth, to manifest the divine down here. The unification of the worlds is achieved when the spiritual principles that prevail in the supermundane worlds are put into reality on the material level. In heaven rule truth, justice, beauty, and love. Because heaven is the highest world you can imagine. And the highest world you can imagine is a world where exactly these principles apply. The supermundane world only differs from the earth because people fail to give validity to these principles down here. The bridge between the two worlds can be made real if the actions are filled with beauty. If life on earth is arranged according to the principles of the spiritual world, if as many of us as possible assume these ideals and express them in their everyday life, then the divine spirit, the higher will, rules not only in heaven but on earth as well. Then we have established the kingdom of God, paradise on earth. Therefore it is said in the Bible, "Thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven." Or in the Agni Yoga, the victory of the spirit lies in the enforcement of the unshakable principles. To manifest God means put into effect truth, justice, beauty, and love. The divine is made a reality in the material world by embodying these principles. God reigns wherever man ensures the realization of his principles. A servant of God is the one who enforces these ideals on earth. The correspondence between the worlds is manifested by the action which realizes the firm foundations. The mission of mankind is to fight for the victory of the spirit against the powerful resistance of the forces of ignorance, unbelief, and materialism. How easy it is to ameliorate life only by striving to the victory of the spirit. This applies to the individual as well as to humanity as a whole. The opposition against spirituality must be overcome, both within ourselves and in the world. Instead, both we ourselves and the order of human society must reflect the divine. You will only be able to cope with this task if you realize principles such as truth, justice, and beauty, which make life so wonderful in heaven, are absolute and immutable. There's only one truth, only one justice, and only one beauty. Many truths are spoken of. Should one not break through their shells and strive to the one truth? Only absolute values can provide an unassailable basis for the transformation of life, for the building of a new world. Without them, you will find neither support nor orientation. Therefore, on the loftiest principles will be erected the future evolution. For that which was destroyed must enter anew into life as a great guiding foundation. It is one of the most harmful diseases of the time that people no longer believe in the one truth, the one beauty, and the one justice. People mistakenly presume that justice is a relative concept, that everyone has his own justice and his own good. Such a misconception can cause irreparable harm. If, as the saying goes, every man has his own truth and his own ideas about beauty and justice, this only means everyone has his individual approach to these principles. The one a higher, more advanced, and the other a lower, more limited one. The ability of us humans to recognize and to put into practice these high principles is still limited. Truth is always the same, but the connections are different as they depend on the consciousness. The world is very different from the state which most of you imagine. The phrase "everything is relative" applies, as Einstein proved, only to the seemingly fixed and invariable plane of matter, time and space. On the spiritual plane, however, nothing is relative, but everything is absolute. The victory of the spirit must be won in the midst of life. Down here, in everyday life on earth, the carrier of a higher mission has to prove himself. Here, his faithfulness to principles and his perseverance are required. The suffering, the tension that we feel between the higher reality and the imperfect earthly conditions call us to action, to amend the circumstances, to bring the material conditions closer to the ideal. How beautiful is the spirit that ascends and transforms life into the radiance of infinity. Wars, disasters and destruction, chaos in public and private life are setbacks on the way, which are incompatible with human dignity. They must be fought and overcome. He who understands imperfection must start with perfectionment. Only the mainspring of transformation of darkness into light can strengthen the spirit. Every man has to seek the path that raises his life and that of his surroundings. That is the truly creative task of man, the much brooded over meaning of life. To find ever new ways to bring the warmth of the heart into the world. To introduce the high teachings, commandments, advices and principles into daily life. To enforce the spirit against all the chaos and all the resistance of matter. Let us inflexibly strive to be aware of the warmth of the heart, and let us start feeling ourselves to be bearers of this temple. Above all the questions of everyday toiling must be the one: how can I, at every moment, advance the cause of truth, justice, beauty, and love? This is the task we need to work on. Only then the spirit prevails over the circumstances. Without betraying one's principles, it is possible to find hundreds of worthy solutions. I wish to see you upon the next step. The ideal is given to us from above. Its realization in each, even the most insignificant everyday situation, is the truly creative human achievement. One should sow the good with every glance, with every touch, and the heart will grow in this exercise of goodness.